High above the crashing waves of Crete, trapped within the stone walls of a tower, there lived a master craftsman and his young son. Day after day, Daedalus looked out across the endless blue sea, his mind turning like a complex wheel, desperate to find a path to freedom where no path existed. Beside him stood Icarus, watching the gulls sweep and dive through the open sky, their white wings catching the sunlight as they rode the shifting winds. The boy did not feel the heavy weight of the prison. He only saw the vastness of the air and the magic of flight. Each morning, they gathered the feathers dropped by the birds on the stone balcony. Daedalus handled every quill with absolute precision, sorting them by size and length, his hands moving with the quiet patience of a man who knew that a single mistake could cost everything. One quiet evening, using only melted beeswax and coarse twine, the inventor began to piece the feathers together. And there, holding the candle steady to melt the wax, was Icarus. The boy watched the liquid wax drip and harden, capturing the feathers in a perfect, fragile frame that looked exactly like the wings of a great bird. Daedalus fitted the heavy frames onto his son's shoulders to test the balance. The contraption was a masterpiece of design, strong yet light, intricate, the kind of invention that changes the boundaries of what is possible because it dares to look at the open sky and see a highway instead of a barrier. Before they stepped onto the ledge, the father took the boy by his shoulders and looked deeply into his eyes. He spoke of the dangerous margins, the damp fog of the sea that would weigh the feathers down, and the fierce heat of the sun that would melt the binding wax. The wind howled around the stone tower, calling them to jump. Daedalus adjusted the straps one final time, his hands trembling slightly with a deep fear that love often brings when facing the unknown, knowing that the very thing giving them freedom could also bring their ruin. And with a final nod, he told his son to stay right behind him, to fly the middle course, the way a bird steers carefully between the storm clouds and the burning stars, seeking only the safety of the open air. With a deep breath, father and son stepped onto the edge of the stone balcony and leapt into the empty air. For a terrifying heartbeat, they dropped toward the jagged rocks below, before the wind caught the feathers and lifted them up, into the vast blue sky. Icarus gasped as the ground shrank beneath his feet, the great stone tower turning into nothing more than a tiny speck against the massive island of Crete. The sensation of weightlessness washed over him, wiping away every memory of the stone prison. They soared past the coastal cliffs, leaving the island behind as they flew out over the open ocean. The rushing wind sang in Icarus's ears, a wild, beautiful melody of absolute freedom. He watched his father flying steadily ahead, moving with careful, measured strokes of his great wings. But Icarus could not contain the bubbling laughter in his chest, testing the air by dipping his wings to glide left and right, feeling like a creature born of the sky. As the morning progressed, the sea below turned into a shimmering blanket of deep diamonds. Icarus looked up at the sun, which bathed the entire world in a warm, golden glow that felt entirely magical. He began to climb higher, gently pulling away from the middle path his father had commanded him to follow. The air grew thinner, crisper, and sweeter with every foot he climbed, pulling him upward like an invisible thread tied directly to his heart. Higher and higher the boy flew, completely enchanted by the dazzling brilliance of the sky. Daedalus called out from below, his voice swallowed by the vast emptiness of the wind. warning his son to look down. But Icarus was too far away, lost in the radiant warmth that now blanketed his shoulders like a heavy, golden cloak. He reached his hand out toward the light, feeling an overwhelming sense of wonder, completely unaware of the quiet danger gathering at his back. Slowly, under the fierce heat of the midday sun, the white beeswax binding the feathers began to soften. A single golden drop of liquid wax ran down a quill, falling silently into the sky below, followed soon by another, and then another. Icarus felt a strange slackness in his wings, the smooth rhythm of his flight suddenly stuttering as the feathers began to slip out of their neat rows. A cold chill of realization fluttered in his chest, breaking the spell of the golden afternoon. He beat his arms frantically, but the air simply slipped through the widening gaps of the loosening frames. White feathers drifted past his face, floating upward for a brief moment before tumbling down toward the distant sea. He called out for his father, his voice raw with a sudden, quiet panic as the sky gave way beneath him. The warm, comforting sun remained entirely unchanged, shining brightly on the empty space where the boy had stood just a moment before. The wind roared in reverse as Icarus fell through the clouds, the ocean rushing up to meet him at an impossible speed. Daedalus turned his head just in time to see a streak of white and gold cutting through the sky, dropping toward the dark blue water below. The father plunged downward in a desperate race against time, his own wings straining under the sudden pressure, his heart shattering with every second that passed. But the distance between them was simply too vast to close. With a soft, distant splash, the waters closed over the young boy, leaving only a few white feathers bobbing gently on the surface of the waves. The sea became perfectly still again, its long blue swells rolling on as though nothing had happened at all. Daedalus circled the waters for hours, calling his son's name into the fading afternoon light. But the only answer was the steady, rhythmic lapping of the tide against his wings. Exhausted and heartbroken, the old craftsman finally touched down on a nearby shore, carrying the heavy grief that would follow him for the rest of his days. He named the surrounding waters the Icarian Sea, ensuring the world would always remember the boy who dared to fly. And every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the waves murmured a quiet lullaby to the stars, keeping the memory of Icarus safe within the deep, peaceful cradle of the sea.